This morning finds us in Silver Springs, Florida. We're at the state park, and we're going to take a ride on the glass bottom boat out through the springs, and if we're lucky we'll see a manatee. The water is crystal clear. It's gorgeous. Lots of people out here enjoying the kayaks. Birds are fishing. Should be a good time.
The boats we're running today are all just like that.
Famous glass bottom boat tours. Now, my name is Captain Bridger, and I'm going to be your captain and guide for the next 30 minutes or so. And before we get too far away from the dock, I am required to tell y'all that I am licensed and certified by the U.S. Coast Guard to be your captain today. So with that, there are a few safety spiels that we have to go over first. First and foremost, I do have a radio here beside me that's in contact with that other boat over there and the dock back here behind us. And if for some reason any of you folks were to become ill or impaired, just let me know and I'll have EMTs on the dock within about 15 minutes for you. Now, if for some reason I were to become ill or impaired and I'm not able to finish the trip, well then just grab this radio right here. Just push and hold the button here on the left-hand side, and then give them the international distress signal. Help! Just let them know that you're aboard the Chief Yoholo today. Let them know that Captain Bridger is down and out for the count, and help will be with you folks shortly. Also, folks, we do have life jackets conveniently located right above your heads here. The adult jackets are there in the middle, and the child jackets are towards the front and the back of the boat. Now, don't worry though, folks, because in over 100 years, we've never needed to use a life jacket, so we should be just fine for today. But if for some reason something were to happen, I'll just ask you to bring them down from the top, place them over your head, secure them around your waist, and then make your way out into the water. And then from there, folks, an alligator rescue team will be here shortly to save you all. And it will only cost you an arm and a leg for the service. Now, one last thing before we start looking at some springs today, folks. These 3 panes of glass that you're looking through right here are just ½ an inch thick, and these are not magnified at all. In fact, these down here are just regular old pieces of glass from 1968. But now, folks, with all of that being said, this first spring that we're going to look at today is called the Spring of Stars. Now, as I'm sure some of you folks probably already know, many movies and TV shows have been filmed here in Silver Springs all throughout the years. And the very first one was filmed back in 1916. And that was a silent black and white film called The Seven Swans. And since 1916, world-renowned actors and actresses like Jane Russell, Burt Reynolds, Jerry Lewis, Lloyd Bridges, Tom Cruise, Johnny Weissmuller, Steve Irwin, and many, many more have all done movies and TV shows right here at Silver Springs, and in some cases at this very spring that we're at right now. And at this spring's deepest point down here, this is going to reach about 25 feet deep. Now, while we're on the topic of movies, though, folks, by a quick show of hands, how many on board has seen the classic horror movie, The Creature from the Black Lagoon? Oh, yeah. Oh, that's cool. Well, this next spring we're cruising into, folks, is the Creature Spring. Now, this is going to be called the Creature Spring because this is the site of where we get our very first appearance of this creature underneath the water in the iconic film. Now, Creature from the Black Lagoon was released back in 1954, starring Richard Carlson and Julie Adams. And to this day, it is still considered a horror movie classic of all time. And all underwater shots of that movie were filmed right here at Silver Springs. Now, the depth of this spring down here is going to reach anywhere around 30 to 32 feet deep. And for those of you on board who have not seen Creature from the Black Lagoon, the Walmart right across the street from the park normally has it on DVD for about $5. Now, those smaller fish that you're looking at down here are different kinds of brim, primarily bluegill. Some of the bigger fish you may see around here, different kinds of bass, mullet. You might be able to see some catfish at the mouth of the spring down there. Now, all the fish that we're looking at right here, though, are just taking the glass ceiling tour today, so make sure to wave. Now, this next spring we are approaching, folks, is going to be called the Abyss. Now, years ago, we had some divers out here to measure just how deep this next spring goes. And so, they grabbed their scuba diving gear, and they went down below into the abyss. Now, as these divers got deeper, they learned real quick that this became a lot tighter as they went down. Well, it got so tight that they had to take off their air tanks and push them in front of them to wedge themselves deeper into this spring.
You can see the water coming up from the spring.
Right. Well, these brave souls ended up getting deeper and deeper. And eventually, they were stopped by this spring at about 81 feet down below. Pretty crazy. But while they were down there, they noticed that there was still just a little bit of wiggle room left over below them. And so they grabbed some weighted line and they dropped over a 1/4 mile of rope deeper into this spring, and it never hit the bottom. So, we really have no idea how deep this spring actually is. But for the record books, this is listed as at least a 1/4 mile straight down. Now, to give y'all an idea, though, on just how deep we think this spring is, one day we did find a sign floating from below down here. And that sign, oddly enough, was written in Chinese.
Oh, that funny.
Pretty deep hole, huh, guys? Might go to the other side of the world. The joke is not that funny. Alright, we'll go.
Here's another one.
Now, this next area we'll pull into, folks, is limestone. Now, if you don't know what the Florida Aquifer is, kind of think of an underground lake and river system that spreads throughout almost the entire state of Florida, and it even creeps into Georgia and beyond. And there are certain points in the aquifer where all the force from this water erodes away from the limestone, eventually cracking onto the surface of the earth, creating the spring heads like the ones we're looking at here today. And then all of this in turn is going to help create the lakes and rivers like the Silver River that we're currently on as we speak. Now, as we start to round the cluster of trees here, if you look over to the right, up in the branches here, you'll see some of these larger black birds hanging out up here. These are all going to be both anhingas and cormorants. And these will be some of our swimming birds that we get out here. Now these birds up here will swim around and they'll look for something to eat, usually in the form of smaller fish, like some of our brim that we have out here. And these birds up here are excellent swimmers, and they're even better fishermen. But these birds are going to lack a natural oil in their body to repel water. And so when they're swimming around, all this water is going to soak into their body like a sponge. So eventually there's a point where these birds are too heavy to even hold themselves underneath the water. And when that happens, you're able to find them hanging out on tree branches in the area, like these two cormorants coming up here to the right-hand side. Two cormorants in anhinga, might I add. And as demonstrated by that anhinga there, you'll find them spreading their wings out to dry off manually. Now this next spring we're entering is the Spring of Life. Find a very interesting piece of wood down here along the bottom of the river. As I get us in a position here, we're going to start to see two pretty big items down here. But we're going to focus on the much skinnier and much flatter thing that's down here for right now. Now, this piece of wood down here has garnered so much attention that the University of Florida from up in Gainesville wanted to come down and look at this thing for us. Now, they wanted a closer look at it though, so they ended up taking this thing out of the water and they brought it up to Gainesville to do their research on it. Now here throughout the Silver River, folks, we have over 32 different species of fish out here. Now this is all including, but it is not limited to, 3 different kinds of bass, 2 different types of gar. We have catfish, and armored catfish, and several different types of brim. And around here we also have mullet, bowfin, mudfish, shad, river trout, and we even have tilapia in this river. And the tilapia is an invasive species originally from Asia. Now, we're not 100% positive though on how the tilapia even ended up here in Central Florida. But if you ask me, I'm thinking that they probably took a shortcut through the abyss. A little funnier the second time.
Yeah.
Now, if you folks look at about our 2 o'clock to the right-hand side here, through the palm trees, you'll see that large statue there of Osceola of the Seminole Native American tribe. Now, the story behind the statue up there depicts of when Osceola refused to sign a treaty with the U.S. government. And you see, at this point, during the early 1800s, the U.S. was pushing a lot of natives away from this area. And their treaty, quote, quote, basically said that as long as the Seminoles do not put up a fight, then the Americans will let them leave the area with their lives. So, Osceola did not take too kindly to that message. So he took their treaty and he placed it on top of a table, took out his very large knife, and he drove it right through saying that he would not sign and that the Seminoles would not be leaving anytime soon. Now, these actions are of course what sparked a war between the U.S. and Seminoles, and all of these actions took place right here within this general area of Ocala. Now, even though a lot of the Seminoles did end up getting pushed all throughout the country, a good number of them fought, and they remain here in Florida still to this day. So they never left, and more importantly, they never signed. So, the Seminoles, folks, are truly unconquered. Except when it comes to football. Alrighty, folks, we are now approaching the main event of our tour today. Now, coming under the glass here in just a moment, we will find Mammoth Spring. Now, Mammoth Spring is going to be the head spring of the entire Silver River. And the spring itself is going to be a cave that's around 5 feet tall and about 65 feet wide. So because of this spring's very large size, you folks on my left are going to get the best look at the spring first. It'll be this big shadowy area down here. But I will spin the boat and make sure that everybody can get a good look at this thing down here. Now, this one spring by itself is responsible for pushing out over 550 million gallons of water every single day. And that massive number is what makes this spring the largest artesian spring made out of limestone in the entire world. Now, the water that's coming out of the Florida aquifer maintains a constant temperature of 72 degrees year-round. And right out of the spring, this water is already 99.8% pure fresh water. Now, all this water is going to form the Silver River here, which flows for about 5.5 miles over Jacksonville, and then eventually out into the Atlantic Ocean. And at this spring's deepest point out here, this is going to reach a total of about 40 feet deep out here.
It's amazing how clear the water is.
Now, as we are getting ready to cross Mammoth Spring, though, folks, there is still just one final thing I want to show y'all before we head back. Now, right around 1967, there required an underwater scene with some underwater statues. And these statues are what we are going to be cruising on top of right now. Now, these three statues right here are the Greek gods, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. Right now, these are sitting in almost 30 feet of water. They will each stand roughly 7 feet tall, and these are made almost entirely out of a mythical substance called fiberglass. Now, originally for I Spy, there were 12 of these statues in total. And then, when filming was done, they were going to bring all 12 out of the water. But some of the local people in Silver Springs put up such a stink that they compromised, and they only took out 9. So, they left 3 beneath us down here for our viewing pleasure. How nice. But it seemed to have worked out because after I Spy, you're able to find these three in the James Bond movie Moonraker with Roger Moore. And then aside from Moonraker and I Spy, you're able to find these three statues in the area all around us and plenty of other different movies.
Like, can you send them to me? Yeah, it's so cool.
Caution. Alligators are present along the trails and waterways of this park. They usually eat fish, turtles, and other small animals, but may attack larger animals such as deer. Alligators have been known to attack humans. No swimming. Alligators are dangerous. Do not approach, frighten, or feed by state law. I gotta see if I can find one. Here, gator, gator, gator.